If you've been browsing the interwebs for a new subcompact crossover SUV, chances are you glanced upon this one, the Nissan Kicks e-Power. Although many of the reviews are of the more expensive 1.5 million peso model, this one though, well, we asked for the cheaper one. Let's see how this one gets along. Nissan has a distinction of being the first major volume automobile brand in the Philippine market to venture in full electric vehicles. That would be with the Leaf. But the Leaf has a big problem, and that's with pricing. The reason for that is because Nissan, well, they don't get it from Japan. They have to get it from the UK. And that presents a problem because when you import a car from the UK all the way to the Philippines, factor in all the shipping, everything else, exchange rates, well, the price here, 2.8 million pesos for the Leaf, which kind of sucks. This one, though, is the e-Power Nissan Kicks, and it's imported from Thailand. Now, just the shortness of the distance alone is a big advantage, but also the free trade agreement, because that means they can price this very attractively from 1.2 to 1.5 million pesos, which is pretty fair for a subcompact crossover. This one is the 1.3 million model. The Kicks itself is not an entirely new model for Nissan. Actually, they've had the Kicks in other markets since I think 2016. But this is the first time that they're launching the Kicks model in the Philippine market. If anything, it actually kind of replaces the Nissan Juke. And if you look around the vehicle, yes, it does look very nice, and this is the facelift. But you do see a lot of the cues of the Juke in this one, particularly with those taillights in the rear. But of course, the sides, it's bigger than the Juke. The front, of course, is very, very different from the Juke because, well, they don't have that split headlight thing going on in front. This is more conventional. But looking at the design here, it does look quite neat because it's very neat what Nissan did with this area right here with the fender and the headlight kind of integrating very nicely, and with the hood kind of not really taking up the whole space here. But look at the front, you've got the new Nissan logo there. It looks very neat. It's kind of encased in some kind of glass or plastic or whatever. The grille, it's very chunky, seems very, very durable to me because you push on it, it doesn't move. They have the V-motion grille right here, which does look neat. They call it the double V-motion. Which, whatever the case may be, I think it does look good. But some of the things here as well, they have a floating roofline effect. Because if you look right here, black A pillar, black B pillar, and black C pillar. Well, a section of the C pillar, creating the floating roof effect. Of course, being that the color is a bit dark, well, you can't really see it as much, apart from the roof rails. The back of the Kicks e-Power does look good. I mean, I like what Nissan did with the lines here, particularly the glass line here. The taillights, I like the homage to the Juke and even the 370Z, which is being phased out in favor of the 400Z. This center part here is not a light bar per se. It's more of a reflector, so it doesn't really light up. It does have the nice Nissan logo there. Kicks logo, e-Power emblem right there. But even though it says e-Power, you may think it's a full EV, but it's not. Because you look under here, it's a fuel cap. So it's a traditional fuel-run vehicle, sort of. We'll explain later. Another thing I really like is the trunk space. Because if you look at that, many small crossovers like this don't have fantastic trunk space. And that's because they're very small, but in this one, they're able to generate quite a bit. I don't have my tape measure with me, but I will do some measurements when I get home and we'll flash it on the screen for you. But the size gets even better because, as you can see, you can actually fold it down, but it's not a full fold flat thing because, as you can see, there's a ledge there for the hinge of the rear seat backs. The reason for that is they have a lot going on under that rear seat. We'll explain why later. But a couple of the things I want to point out here. Well, when we remove the rear floorboard, let's take this out and I'll show you. You notice there's a lot going on over here because, for one, there's no spare. What you have instead is a tire repair kit, which is oddly enough by Continental. which is weird because the tires are Dunlop and these are Continental, which is again strange. You have this fluid here, which you're supposed to use for that kind of repair. A tow bar, which I would probably think would get used more often if you're stuck on a dark road. Personally, I would rather go for a donut spare here, or actually if I got a Nissan Kicks e-Power, I would buy a spare and put it there because I would rather have that kind of versatility to be able to change a tire and go. If you notice, there's not even a jack. It's actually all styrofoam. But the reason they couldn't put a spare tire is because of that battery. And if you notice, it says Renault Nissan. Let me explain why. The thing about most modern vehicles, especially hybrids and electric vehicles, is that all the technology can be very intimidating. But car makers try to make it up with the interior. They try to engineer something that's very, very familiar. And that is definitely the case with the Kicks e-Power, because look at the dashboard, it's very conventional, it's very cleanly designed. I like what they did here, but more importantly, given that this is a mid-grade model and not the top of the line one, it doesn't feel mid-grade at all because you'll hold the steering wheel. It has a nice texture to it, a nice grip. It's got a flat bottom like the Momo Apache. So those of you who drove and changed out steering wheels before, you'd know what that is. And the new Nissan logo, it's got the 55% split digital dashboard with a traditional speedometer on the right side. Screen here, but more on that later. It's even got the soft pad here with the stitching. I think it's real stitching, which does look nice. But I like the pattern that Nissan chose for the seats. The black with the honeycomb there and the blue stitching. It really pops. I mean, I think they're matching it with the color of the vehicle and the Kicks e-Power logo. But it's not leather, but again, that's not a big deal for me. I prefer this kind of fabric. Now, looking at some of the features of the vehicle. Let's go to the screen first. Now, first, this is a very nice screen. It's very familiar if you've driven Nissans before. I mean, even in my one and in my vehicle, the setup looks very, very familiar. So it's very easy. You can customize it to your liking. So you can move the widgets around, see like that. You can add widgets, customize it to your liking, which is cool. One thing I did notice is that the audio quality on this one is really fantastic. Of course, hello, Dr. Dre. Okay, we can't play that for you because, YouTube will cut it out. But let me tell you now, the audio quality at stock is good. And it's not even Bose speakers of anything of the sort. It's got your Bluetooth, the usual connectivity options, so on and so forth. But one thing we did notice, it doesn't have the camera system that we've come to love with Nissans. The 360 around view monitor is not available in this model. You kind of have to pay more. You kind of have to subscribe to it. And speaking of subscribe, don't forget to subscribe to AutoIndustriya to get the latest news and reviews on all the latest cars in the market today. So moving right along, on the center stack, you have your climate control here, which is nice and it's very powerful, and it works, of course, even with the engine not running. Now, to start the vehicle or to get it into a ready status, you press the starts up button there. So nothing really alien. You have your electronic parking brake here with the auto brake hold, useful in traffic. USB ports, 2 of them. One is the USB-C port, so you have that if you have that faster cable, or the traditional USB port and the 12-volt outlet right there. There is no 240-volt outlet anywhere that I saw. But anyways, what's really more important is what's going on here in the middle. This is the thing that's different about the e-Power in general, because instead of your traditional gear lever, you have this. So you have park. Of course, right now we're in park. You can reverse right there. You push it forward or pull it back depending on what you want to activate. So the drive and the engine braking. And then you put it there to... I still need practice with this one. But personally, I think this is going to be one of my biggest criticisms of this vehicle. It's not very engaging like a gear stick, or even the Prius. The one on the Prius is actually a nice little stick thing. I would actually much prefer that over this one, but either way, it works. What's important here though is the drive mode button, because when you press this button right here, you can cycle through the drive modes right there on the screen. So you have the sport mode right there, you have the eco mode, and then you have normal mode. There's also a toggle here called EV right here on the bottom. Take a look at that. And then when you pull that, you have to press it first into sport or eco. If you pull this button, you end up in EV mode, right? Or get out of EV mode. But if you want to charge your battery, like right now we're about maybe 60%. If you pull it and hold it, it'll go into charge mode. So that is how you top up your battery. Now, for practicality, what else we got? Well, you've got dual cup holders here, and I can actually fit a bottle in there pretty nicely. It's pretty deep. But what's interesting here is that Nissan made sure it can fit. Oh, by the way, this can also go down here on the bottle holder, which, by the way, is pretty generous. But it has a divider. So if you look, you can actually subdivide. You can have space underneath, and you can have two cups right here. It's not very secure though, as we found out on one of our long drives. The center armrest here is also one of the smallest one we've seen in any vehicle actually. It's very, very shallow. But also the glove compartment, that is actually pretty big. It's bigger than the one on my truck. But other than that, I think that about wraps it up for the front part. Let's go to the back seat. The back seat of the Kicks e-Power is actually quite nice because even though that this is already my seat setting, it's plenty spacious here in the back with plenty of knee room to spare. In terms of cushioning, it's really nice. You've got two USB ports here, no AC vent in the back, but at least you can charge if you're on the go, particularly for kids or for fellow road trip mates, no problem. If you have young children, like little children, you can clamp on or hook on a child seat right here in the back with the ISOFIX anchors, even here on this side. But what's really interesting in the back seat is not what's going on anywhere around here or the headrest, but with the floor. If you put your foot under the front seat, you'll notice a big hump. Same with the left side, same with the right side. The reason for that is the battery. That's where the battery is. And if you also notice, underneath this seat, this seems a bit higher, which is why it gives you a nice view over the headrest. I mean, right now with the lowest setting of that, I can see over that, no problem. The reason is fuel tank, and then you have a battery. That is the compromise of any kind of hybrid system because you have to carry around the battery pack and the fuel tank. Now let's take a look at the engine bay. This is the reason why there's a Renault under the floorboard in the back. The engine. This is a Renault-Nissan engine. Of course, the Renault-Nissan and now Mitsubishi Alliance, the engine is an HR12DE. If you've watched my Nissan Almera review before, that one has the HR10DE, the 1-liter 3-cylinder turbo engine from the same family of engines. This one is the non-turbo version. But make no mistake about it, the engine is not actually driving the car. Well, in a matter of speaking, yes, but it's only functioning as a generator because only the electric motor is driving the front wheels. That is the secret behind Nissan's e-Power system in the Kicks. Actually, in any of the Nissan's e-Powers, that is really the trick because we've driven e-Powers before in Singapore and in Japan to experience what the technology is all about. And the sensations are really different. And that's because only the electric motor can drive the front wheels, giving you the qualities of an electric drive system, meaning instant torque and pretty good power. This one makes 136 horsepower, but more importantly, 218 Newton meters of torque, which is quite high for something this small, but at a very low 0 RPM. Yes, instant torque is the benefit of any pure, proper electric vehicle. Even in a hybrid, you don't get that. Although this is a hybrid, but it's a series hybrid. It's not like the series/parallel hybrid that the Toyota Prius, Corolla Cross, or Corolla Altis, or any of the Lexus models are. So, does it make a difference in the driving experience? Well, let's take it out to find out. If you've driven models like the Prius or the Toyota hybrids in general, the experience of the e-Power system will be actually quite different. If anything, the experience of this one is more similar to a full EV or a PHEV, like let's say you have the Leaf, which is a full EV, that's also a Nissan. You have the iX, you have the e-tron, those are full EVs. Then you have the PHEVs like the Outlander PHEV I drove like a couple of years ago. The experience of this one is very similar to that, because again, only the electric motor is actually driving the front wheels. There's no engine power that goes into that. So if anything, it actually feels weird, because when the engine does kick in to charge the batteries, it's just at a constant RPM. It doesn't try to accelerate like you would have like an engine, the RPM of the engine matching the speed of the vehicle, and you can hear it and feel it in the pedals. There's none of that in this one. The engine just hums along when it's charging. Where I really see this e-power playing a major role here is with everyday driving. I mean, that's the beauty of this, because you drive it around, it's super smooth. Even when the engine kicks in, because I mean, it's a 3-cylinder engine, so I've already noted many times that a 3-cylinder engine tends to have a bit more vibration than, say, similarly sized 4-cylinder engines. But in this one, the vibrations of that 3-cylinder are actually kept to a very nice minimum. And even when it's on, you don't really feel that much. When it's off, then you feel nothing, because nothing is running. There's no mass moving in the engine bay, nothing causing vibrations. So it's very, very smooth if you're sitting in, say, a stoplight. And it's kind of similar to the experience of having those start-stop systems, cutting the engine in and out depending on the situation. But in this case, you can fully enjoy the AC and the radio and all the amenities of your car. The other benefit of this technology is, of course, being super quiet, because there's nothing running. There's no noise, there's no exhaust noise. Right now, I'm stuck in traffic or at a stoplight. No noise at all. Now that the engine kicks in, there's a little bit of vibration, but even then, the noise is very minimal. I can hear the idling of the tricycle in the back. It's not really bothersome, but you notice a few more things. And I mentioned earlier that the audio system of this one is really good. So the speakers, you can enjoy a bit more of that music while you're cruising around. There's also this misconception that these e-powers are really slow. Let's try it out. 1, go. The engine actually kicked in right there to give more power to the battery. But it does lunge forward, which is nice. Again, that's the torque being given to you right from the get-go. That's the fun part about these electric motors. It can be fun. Now, speaking of driving fun, it's not gonna excite you in that way. I mean, the handling is good. They did keep the weight down pretty well, but you can feel the firmness of the suspension. They kind of have to, I guess, beef that up, because you are dealing with more weight in an EV because of the battery system and the fact that you're carrying around 2 powertrains, or, well, you're carrying out an engine, which is also charging the battery, and you're also carrying the electric motor and everything else that you need in a car. So you do have more weight in a hybrid vehicle than you would in a lot of other types of vehicles. Keep that in mind. But one thing I did notice, though, is when we're going over humps, especially with 4 people in the car, I can feel the bump stops. What that means is when the shocks in the back reach the end of travel, it's not jarring, it's not uncomfortable, but I can feel it. Nissan probably doesn't appreciate that I keep calling the e-power a hybrid, even though they're really trying to market it as e-power as kind of its own thing. But the fact that it's, even if it's full EV driving, meaning propulsion to the wheels, the fact that it has an engine means it is a hybrid. So I will keep calling it a hybrid no matter what. But it does have its advantages being that way, because for one, there's no range anxiety. You get the EV experience without the range anxiety. That is a big and important detail. If you've seen my BMW iX video by now, I explained there what range anxiety is, or at least I give you an example. Like, it's like when your phone is on its last 5% of battery and you have nowhere to charge, and your girlfriend or your mom is calling you, so it kind of causes that kind of anxiety. But scale it up to a car with the threat of being, let's say, stuck in the middle of nowhere. That's the kind of anxiety you would feel in an EV. In this one, there's none of that. All you really need to do is go to a gas station, fuel up, and you're good to go. Now, speaking of fuel economy, this one can do around 19 kilometers per liter in the city, and that is by our test. Now, it's a bit under Nissan's claim of 22 to 25, but I'm not complaining at 19 kilometers per liter because with our traffic, that is perfectly fine. That also means that when they're claiming the range of the vehicle on one full tank, you're getting anywhere between, let's say, I think 900 to 1,000 kilometers on a full tank. And that's why when some of my guys, they drove it to Bicol, they drove these vehicles to Bicol and back without, I think, needing to refuel. And some did top up, but yeah, that's really outstanding for range. There are only two things that I wish Nissan worked on with this vehicle. The first one is that shifter. Now, I don't know about you, but this thing feels to me like either an old mouse, like on an Apple One, or a whiteboard eraser. Take your pick. It just doesn't feel right to me. The second thing, I really wish Nissan put in an option to charge, or at least the ability to charge at home, because I would like to be able to top up my battery overnight when I'm parked in my garage and have a full battery in the morning when I wake up. I can just unplug and go. But they didn't do that. And I was quite critical of them for that, I guess, a misstep, oversight, whatever, during the deep dive discussion of this vehicle, because that would have taken it to the next level. And it's kind of a shame that they didn't opt for that option in this vehicle. But at the price point, honestly, I think they did a good job. Because at 1.3 million, I think this is perfect for everyday driving. And you can take it around the city or out of town without having to worry about infrastructure. And at the end of the day, convenience is a wonderful thing. Like I said earlier, I would not hesitate to recommend the Nissan Kicks e-Power. Now, it won't excite you when you're taking it on a mountain road, but it does have the power. But it's best really when you use this every day so you can benefit from the advantages of having the hybrid technology. Yes, hybrid technology. This is, in fact, a series hybrid. Now we come to the price, because this one retails for 1.309 million to be exact. And I think that is a slam dunk for something like this. A lot of crossovers in its class are a little bit under or even a little bit over it. And this just makes a compelling argument for itself in the class, even when you compare it against, let's say, the Honda HR-V, the non-turbo version. This one, you already get the series hybrid technology. But really, you should drive it for yourself and see whether it fits you. Because some of the concerns with this kind of a vehicle is the long-term reliability, especially with the battery system. But given that Nissan is offering this with a longer warranty, well, there's not really much to worry about. This is Vince of AutoIndustriya.com. To know more about what we do here, you can log on to AutoIndustriya.com, or you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and any other social media that will come in the future. Thanks.